I feel like I struggled to get to the end of the week, and it was all about footballs, for crying out loud. I think you probably feel the same way. This has been one of the strangest weeks. I just wrote a little blog that I write on 630wpro.com as part of my radio gig, and I just kind of, this is one of the strangest, weirdest weeks, da-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba. And then, well, you'll have to read it to figure out what my logic was 20 minutes ago when I wrote it, but my logic tonight is we have to talk about it. So Bill Koch from the Providence Journal is in to save me. You know, I had the press room before the URI basketball game last night where I handled a public address. Of course, Bill is the new but certainly seasoned writer at the Journal. I said, can you come in and talk sports with me on a Friday? Because no one's thinking about anything else. Or you're exhausted by it. So we'll get to it. Let me not waste any time. Welcome into my state of mind. Thanks very much for watching. On the agenda tonight, that. And this is, I know this is going to sound strange, but this is my concept as to how this whole story has kind of evolved over the course of the week. That's a real news conversation, and a follow-up is coming up on Monday. I shall explain. That's true in part because of economics and in part because of our behavior, and of course your state of mind is very important to me and to the rest of the audience, so please engage. Item number one, Brady's half hour. That's what it was, a half an hour. I was kind of surprised by that. Boston.com headline here. Yep, well, that was whatever that headline writer's impression was. Really, what you got here is a quarterback who had the ball passed to him by his head coach, interestingly enough, who also said, what? I don't know.
I have no knowledge of anything. I have no knowledge of any wrongdoing of any.
Nobody did anything wrong.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable saying that. I'm very comfortable saying that nobody did it. As far as I know, I don't know everything. I also understand that I, was in a locker room preparing for a game for 5 hours. I don't know what happened over the course of the process with the footballs.
Now, adding to the mystery here, look at this headline. This is the guy who caught the interception in the late first half, who reportedly brought it to the sidelines and said, hey, this ball's a little soft, and then all heck broke loose. Well, this morning he's going, I didn't say anything to anybody. I didn't even know. Okay. The NFL today issued a statement saying that, yes, there were balls that were underinflated, that were inflated, which maintained their inflation rate at the proper PSI, 3 letters that everyone now has ingrained in their brain until the end of the game. And then Bob Kraft issued a statement that I don't know about because it happened just before we started the broadcast production, but my terrific guest does know, and that's all we're talking about. So let me hurry up and get out of this. I just wanted to say this, and I'll ask Bill what he thinks about this when we join him in our next segment. You remember Mad Libs? Do you remember the game, the thing? Maybe I'm dating myself. Do the kids still do them? You'd get these, there's a script, and then you fill in all of the blanks. And there's no possible way that anybody, if you lined up 30 people, you'd have 30 different stories that come out of the Mad Libs. There's a kind of a foundational path that the Mad Lib takes, but how you fill in the blanks. So whether it be thermal dynamics, the barometric pressure, the weather and leather, whether it be just theft of integrity by putting pins in balls, whether he knew it and they knew it, whether it happened before the officials took it, before everyone has their own narrative on this. Go to any locker room at any YMCA, and the guys are talking about narratives that don't match up the stuff that I hear on the radio, that don't match up the next. It's been a Mad Lib story. That's my point. All right, we'll talk more about it in the next segment or two. Here's actually a conversation about real news, if you can believe that. The ACLU and highways. This was a commentary piece in the Providence Journal by this guy Steve Ahlquist, who's one of our leading leftists. The ACLU itself actually put out a release today as well, condemning videotaping of protests and also the idea that a felony could be levied against somebody for doing something stupid like this, which is to chain yourself or just you and your group come across a major highway. It's happened in Providence right there. It's happened in Boston last week. And after Boston, legislators in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island started drumming up some new laws. Lou Raptakis, the state senator from Coventry, is proposing, and I told you about this last week, proposing changing misdemeanor language into felony language.
We took highway and streets out of the misdemeanor section of the law and created a special law just for this type of reasoning of protesting on a state highway, which, as you saw what happened yesterday, this could endanger everyone's life.
Yeah, well, okay. I think Lou got a little sloppy with the writing. He's coming in as my guest on Monday, so we'll pare it down and do a little edit for him. I would suggest that it would be wholly appropriate to have a felony charge against somebody who comes across a federal highway, 93, 95. Now, if you're going to protest on Route 44 somewhere, it's a lot different between Scituate and East Providence, right? But it's a state road. I don't want to curtail anybody's First Amendment rights. I don't want Selma to be forgotten. I don't want civil disobedience to be a penalty for life. But when you start screwing around with people's health and welfare across 93 and 95 unannounced, en route to hospitals, guess what? You've taken this thing to an extreme level, a word we like to use a lot around the world today. And thus and such, we move from misdemeanor to felony. It's not hard. ACLU, sorry, you're wrong. All right, next move. You know, with all the gas prices, what did I tell you yesterday? Gas by a gallon is now cheaper than juice and milk and sparkling water. Yet for some reason, the airlines haven't gotten the memo. WPRI.com headline, and of course, the great Susan Hogan tries to explain why.
While gas prices are dropping at the pump, airline fares continue to soar, even though the airline industry reveals that some airlines are saving big on jet fuel. But the savings aren't being passed on to you or me. Part of it is the demand. The last time you flew, you were more likely on a packed plane. The airline industry filled a record 83% of its seats last year. So what's the reason? Well, airline industry experts tell us that airlines are using their gas-saving windfall to pay down debt. Also, some airlines signed long-term contracts for fuel and are paying the older, higher price.
The other part of it is they got us until they don't, right? Until we stop flying, they got us. Here's the irony. We got more money in our pockets because we're driving cheaper, so we're going to go places and fly more. That's my economic analysis. Make a note of that, Pats fans, all of you who are inflating your footballs and heading to Arizona. State of mind. 228-1886 is the number you dial to call us and leave us a voicemail, email, Facebook post, all that. And we got a bunch of Facebook posts here, all in reaction to some of my commentary about, I guess, Deflategate, whatever. Matt says, thermodynamics has nothing to do with it. Listen, if you asked me right now to define thermodynamics, I couldn't. I've just been using the term because some guy on the radio did. It's all about PSIs. And Red Miller says sometimes there are no explanations. Yeah, I forgot. In the Mad Lib, do the car battery thing and make sure you check your car tires because it's directly equivalent to why footballs deflate. And what's the message for children? I don't know. Maybe Bill Koch will tell us when we come back. Stay with us. Yeah, so first it was Bill, then it was Tom, and they more or less had it on the same page.
I've told you everything I know. Told you everything I know. I've told him everything I know. There's nothing else I can add to it.
And what happened?
I have no explanation for what happened. I don't have an explanation for what happened. I have no knowledge of anything. I have no knowledge of any wrongdoing of any.
Nobody did anything wrong.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable saying that. I'm very comfortable saying that nobody did it. As far as I know, I don't know everything. I also understand that I, was in a locker room preparing for a game for 5 hours. I don't know what happened.
This is not your beat,
No,
but you're a brilliant sports mind.
thank you.
And I needed to do this tonight. So thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so what do you make of this?
It's very unfortunate, and it's the reason why you have 2 weeks between the conference title games and the Super Bowl now. They say it's for logistics or whatever else. I think it's so they can talk about the game longer. In this case, the first week of that 2 weeks always blows up into some sort of controversy that may or may not be real. This one looks like it could be real.
Yeah, I'm bad in trivia, so I can't remember yesterday. So I'm trying to figure out what other major controversies were first week talkers in previous Super Bowls. But there's a feeling in my by the way, you like my Mad Lib thing?
Absolutely.
I mean, it really is. Depending on who you talk to and what their take is, and that's kind of a life thing on anything. But I mean, there's so many isolatable, not necessarily confrontable components of this story that once you latch on to one or two of them, your version of what this story is about goes that way, and no one's is exactly the same as another's.
As a fan, your passions are inflamed, and it's very difficult to take the big picture view. For me, this comes down to two things. First, Bill Belichick has been caught cheating before with Spygate,
Right.
so he's not going to get the benefit of the doubt regardless. Secondly, Bill Belichick got himself to this point by being so meticulous, so overly prepared, that even if he didn't tamper with the footballs, you find that very hard to believe because he knows everything that goes on down there.
I thought a more human response, like, look, I swear to God, I don't know anything about this. But the truth is that I bet a lot of head coaches don't. With all the detail you guys allege I pay attention to, PSI never got to me. And it's a learning lesson for me, for my coaches, and down the line, and I bet you the league protocols will change. But whatever is determined to be the responsibility of this team for this, I take it in advance. I welcome the investigation. I hope it hurries up, and I hope we can clear the deck. Why didn't he say something like that?
Because that's not what he does.
Because he can't or he won't?
Both. It's just not in his nature. He's very defiant. He's very standoffish. That's who he is. That's who he's always been. And let's be honest, if you coach at that level and you win that much, these guys have massive egos. They don't want to admit to any of these things, and they don't want to deign to answer questions from you or me about it.
Then he throws it to his quarterback, which I thought was
I
very
was shocked.
strange.
Could not believe that.
Why? Because
he's never shifted the blame for anything onto his players.
right.
Never. About anything. When he said in that presser, the way that Tom prefers his footballs, I don't know much about that. I was shocked that he said it. To me, that was the most surprising statement out of both of those press conferences.
Yet
yesterday.
in a different application, he vociferously presented his I muddy him up and shine him up and freeze him up and dumb him up and wet him down in preparation for whatever is going to go on. And if they complain, they get worse. So in one way, is no idea about a PSI in a football pregame. In another way, he's done everything to a football that anybody could ever done to a football.
Which gets back to one of my original points is he's so meticulously prepared. You can't tell me that he doesn't know the condition of the footballs going into the game.
NFL issued a statement today, I think tardily, typical Friday afternoon news cycle statement, confirming that there were deflated balls that were inflated and kept their inflation. That's the entire thing. Past that, and they don't even have a timetable. It's not going to happen this week or next, is it, do you think? A resolve on this whole thing?
They're not going to do anything before the game because, believe me, the NFL can't stand any of this. They don't want it to overshadow their signature event.
Some
really,
people think it's a marketing scheme and they're just hanging it out there, just, blah, 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 blah.
people would talk about the Super Bowl regardless. It's the biggest sporting event of the year in any sport. But in this case, I don't think the NFL wants something like this to overshadow the actual game, which should be a wonderful one.
I was listening to the guys on some of the sports talk stations on the way over here today, and they were talking X's and O's. And I had this sense of relief. They were talking X's and O's and how the Seattle defense matches up against the Patriots offense. And they stopped themselves because they must have just gotten into it. I only turned the radio on. I was listening to the Hub and Felger and Maserati and what was it, Felger and Maz?
Yep.
And they had a pretty sharp guy on there, and they were just talking. And they stopped themselves and said, holy cow, you know what we just did for the last couple of minutes? We were just talking about the game.
And that's going to happen more and more next week.
I would hope so.
It will.
Promise?
Yes.
You're so reassuring. Speaking of games, is there a chance, since I've got the basketball writer, we can talk a little basketball? Well, it's my damn show. We will. Stay with us. Neal Cotts from the Providence Journal. By the way, congratulations on your move to the Providence Journal.
Thank you.
It was a very, very smart decision on the part of the paper, and you've done such great coverage of both URI and high school sports. I mean, you are a walking encyclopedia of high school sports, aren't you?
I try.
I mean, and the thing about, and I think we've talked about this before, if we haven't, it's important to say it now. You have this innate respect for competition, whether they're 4-year-olds out, playing flag football or Tom Brady, and it reflects in your writing, and that's special.
You just want to watch something that's played at a high level and that's intense and that's competitive. People ask me all the time, what's your favorite sport to cover? Well, I love baseball, but if it's 15-10 and a 3.5-hour game, nobody loves that. I just want to see something that is...
Yeah, but you treat the high school athletics and the local stuff with the same respect that you would give the college or pro beat.
You should. It's a big deal. And
it's a big deal to those kids and those families.
Exactly. They care more that you're there than, say, Tom Brady. He just looks out and would say, you guys. Nice to see you guys today.
Right.
You're covering kids. They actually know who you are, and it's a big deal to get their name in the paper.
Well said. So, since you've been writing the URI beat in your previous post and now here at the Journal, let's start with the Rams. What do you think?
I think that, as Bill Reynolds said, my colleague, they're right on schedule.
He's fun to cover, isn't he?
Certainly is.
People who see his comportment on the sidelines, and maybe even his tone in a press conference, don't really get that he's actually a peach, right? He really, and he's actually pretty self-deprecating and shy in a lot of ways.
If you knew where he came from, if you know his background, you understand that genetics played a big part in this. His father, the Hall of Famer Bob Hurley, is, an older, more agitated version of Dan, the original. But Dan Hurley is he's a guy who has very high standards, and as a media guy, you appreciate the fact that he's very candid. You ask him a question, he's going to answer it, and that's you feel like he's engaging you, which is all you really want.
Yeah, the thing is, but to his disposition, he's a lot easier guy when it's done and off the record than the maniac that some people say he would look like.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been married for a long time, father of 2. Says he does this for his wife and for his kids.
Easy guy to like.
Very much so.
Reflect on your work when you cover him?
You can't. You need to treat him just like anybody else, whether you like him or not. You're going to have some coaches who you get along with and some who you don't. You try and treat them all the same way. There are certainly people who are easier to work with. He is in that category.
Cooley, same thing?
Ed Cooley is a laugh a minute for me. I think he's biting, sarcastic. We have great seats for the Providence Journal where we're right behind his spot on the bench.
Clearly, historically, PC has a slightly bigger footprint. Where do you think it is now and where it's going?
Providence is a little bit ahead, making the NCAAs last year, winning the Big East tournament. They've put themselves a little bit ahead. URI needs to break
Only
through.
because of this last season? I'm talking about historically and big picture.
Well, Providence has always been the state's pro team. That's the way you look at it. They built the Providence Civic Center in the 70s, and they had Ernie DiGregorio and Marvin Barnes, and they go to the Final Four, and it all just came together. And after that, you have 2 generations of people who come and are born and raised into that sort of thing. URI's success has been a little more fleeting. You get the sense that they need to make an NCAA tournament. They haven't since 1999.
So will they?
If they're able to do that.
So will they this year?
This year, I think, is going to be difficult. Just looking at the numbers, the RPI being what it is, the non-conference strength of schedule being what it is, it's going to be hard. But next season, I'd say they have a very good chance.
Which still means they're on schedule.
I think so.
I mean, the expectation shouldn't be so much so that the demand for a tournament berth. I think it's an NIT, though, probably.
I think you can make the NIT. You were picked in the top half of the league this year. Next year, you're going to be picked in the top 4.
But they could go on a run and surprise. That's why they play the game,
I wouldn't want to play them in the tournament, that's for sure.
Who wins the Super Bowl?
The Seahawks.
Oh! You all right, Kev?
I'm all right. It's painful, I know.
Kev's got the Patriots shirt on and everything. Good to see you, man. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Bill Koch. Need to read him. One final thought when we come back. See you later. I asked the crew, what was my final thought? And Kevin told me, well, it's your state of mind, Chubby. You figure it out. I just want to see if I can lift him off the chair because of Bill's prediction that the Seahawks are going to win. It's a tough blow to my director. It's all good. It's all good. On the concept of what's coming up next week, Lou Raptakis, state senator, who will talk about felony penalties for laying across the highway and screwing things up. And we will continue to check in with mayors. Joe Policina, the mayor of Johnston, will join us on Tuesday. I understand we're getting some real winter snow tomorrow, so be careful out there. Get your milk and bread. Hurry up tonight and have a good weekend. We'll see you on the radio noontime on WPRL Monday and back here at 7:30 and 11:30 at MyRI TV. Thanks for watching. Good night.